It's like being straight or being cisgender, like no one ever questions like why the person is straight or if it's a choice. I mean, they just are straight. So just like gay people, they just are gay. There's no need for explanation.
Action.
Hi everyone, my name is Kinji. I'm a therapist at Remind Psychology Center. I'm also a psychology tutor at Monash University.
So Kinji, what is queer-affirming therapy?
Okay, so queer-affirming therapy is an approach in therapy that embraces a positive view of LGBTQ people, and also it addresses the negative effects of oppression and discrimination on their lives. Generally, there are quite a lot of components to queer-affirming therapy. So I'm just going to briefly talk about 3 of them. So the first one is actively support the client's LGBT identity. They're not just tolerating or being okay with their identity. We have to acknowledge, accept, and support their identity. So in this case, we cannot be neutral when it comes to LGBT rights or LGBT identity. For example, like if I have a client who comes to me and tell me he's gay, and if I'm a neutral therapist, I would say something like, oh, I'm okay with you being gay. You know, it won't change anything in our treatment plan. That is not queer affirming because, of course, you should be okay. Like, with them being gay, it shouldn't even be a question. The question is, do you support them? So, support is one of them. Second component is advocacy and empowerment. To be queer affirming, you have to also be an ally to the community. And being an ally means you have to consistently support LGBT rights and also fight against discrimination whenever you see it. So this is even outside of your role as a therapist. Like for me, example, in my personal life, if I see any LGBT news, discrimination, I will try to share it and create discussions about it. And I will try to, if I witness it in real life, I will try to challenge it when I can. So that is, it extends to your role outside of the session as well. Third component is being knowledgeable about LGBT identities. So this means that we have to educate ourselves on the different LGBTQ plus identities, the unique challenges that they have to go through in life, that they face, and also like the basic terminologies that we use. So this is important because I would be able to understand my client better in the session. Like I don't have to spend majority of the session trying to ask them what certain word means. Like it disrupts the flow of the session in that case. So, and it's also not fair or maybe not right even for me to solely rely on my client to be my walking LGBT encyclopedia. So I need to do my own research first and really at least get some basic knowledge about it. And it's okay if we don't know every single thing, but at least we put some time and effort to learn about it.
So what led you to be a queer-affirmative therapist?
So I think it started like during my undergraduate studies. So I majored in psychology. I also did an elective called sexuality studies. So at the time I learned a lot about the different sexual and gender identities. I learned about the lives of LGBTQ plus people in Southeast Asia. It really was enlightening and I figured out, I learned a lot of new things about myself, about my own identity. Especially I learned a new term called minority stress, which basically means the unique stress that LGBT people face just because of their queer identity. So, for example, they face rejection, discrimination, oppression, lack of family acceptance, friends acceptance, and they have to basically hide who they are for their safety. All of these things can take a toll on their mental health, and sadly, they have limited access to effective mental health care. So even though they know like the benefits of therapy, for example, but they might hesitate to try because they are scared. They don't know if the therapist will accept them, reject them. They don't know if the therapist is competent enough, LGBTQ plus issues. I mean, some of them might even be afraid that the therapist might expose their identity either to the authorities or just to anyone. And that can actually have like real life harmful consequence for them. So they really do face a lot of barriers to mental health care. And so I think that is a very important reason why I needed to adopt the queer affirming approach in therapy.
In your opinion, what are some LGBTQIA plus terms that would be most helpful to know?
Okay, so there's like a lot, right? So I'm just gonna maybe walk you through the few general ones. So there's a term called like sexual orientation. So sexual orientation basically means the enduring romantic, emotional, or sexual attraction to other people. So examples of it could be heterosexual, like straight people, homosexual, so gays and lesbians, bisexual. So these are just a few examples of sexual orientation. Another term you should know is gender identity. So gender identity is basically an innate sense of a person's gender. So it could be like male, female, or non-binary, just to name a few examples. Bear in mind that gender is not always the same as, doesn't always correspond with the sex assigned at birth. So what that means is the sex that the doctor assigned the newborn baby based on their external anatomy. So yeah, sex is not always the same as gender. So there are a few terms under gender identity that would be helpful to know. So one of them is cisgender. So cisgender means that people whose gender identity is the same as the sex assigned at birth. And then there's another term, transgender. So transgender is the T in LGBT. So transgender people are people whose gender identity is different from sex assigned at birth. For example, a transgender woman is a person who is assigned male when they were born, but then later on they identify and live as a woman. And then there's another term called non-binary. So non-binary is basically people who they don't identify exclusively as man or woman. So maybe they identify as both men and women, or maybe somewhere in between, or maybe just somewhere completely outside of those two man-woman categories. Another term that I think would be helpful to know is queer. So queer is the Q in LGBTQ. Yeah, in the past, queer has often been used as an insult against LGBT people, but the word has since been reclaimed by many parts of the LGBT movement. So right now, queer is basically used as an umbrella term to describe anyone who isn't exclusively straight or cisgender. So basically, it's another word to describe LGBTQ plus identity. Another term will be, I think a lot of people have heard of this term, coming out. So people use this a lot in conversations. So coming out basically means when LGBTQ people share or disclose their sexual or gender identity with someone. So like they come out. Another term is called closeted or in the closet. That just means LGBT people have not shared or disclosed their sexual or gender identity with anyone. These are the few terms that it would be helpful for you to know.
Nowadays, people tend to use gender identity pronouns on their social media profiles. Why do gender pronouns matter?
Well, first of all, what are gender pronouns? So gender pronouns are basically words that people use to identify themselves in the third person perspective in a way that reflects their gender identity. Examples are like he, him, she, her, or gender neutral pronouns like they, them. A person can actually have more than one gender pronoun. So why it matters is because gender pronouns are a way to identify people in a way that respects their gender identity. It respects who they are as a person. I mean, just like we use names in conversations, gender pronouns are basically like a shorter version of the names. When we address people, we don't have to keep like repeating their name. We can just use their pronouns, right? So that's why it's important. It's always been here. And using someone's correct pronouns is very, very important because it shows that we see them, we acknowledge and we respect their identity. And it also helps create an overall safer and more inclusive environment for everyone, just so that they're not afraid to be misgendered or disrespected.
In the past, homosexuality was diagnosed as a mental illness, but now the diagnosis of homosexuality is removed from the official classification of mental illnesses. Tell us more about it.
In the past, it was considered a mental illness. So it was around 1973 that the American Psychiatric Association, the APA, asked all the members to come and vote on this problem, on this issue. And then, thankfully, a majority of them voted to remove homosexuality from the DSM after a lot of like pressure from gay rights movement and activists. So they removed it. But actually, it was only until 1987 that it was completely removed, because before that, they actually replaced it with something else called sexual orientation disturbance, which means internal conflict with one's sexual orientation. It took almost like 2 decades to fight for the removal. And it was such an important milestone because it shows that homosexuality is not a mental disorder, it's not a pathology. It's just a normal variation of human sexual orientation, just like heterosexuality and a lot of other sexuality. Normalizes a lot of existence of gay people, basically. It was an important step also to change people's minds, like general population's minds about the gay community. That being said, LGBT people do face higher rates of mental health challenges, but that's not because something inherently wrong with them. That's only because of societal stigma, rejection, and just the general lack of acceptance and discrimination.
What are the misconceptions of the LGBTQIA plus community?
Okay, there's like a lot that is infuriating. I'm just going to talk about maybe three of them. So the first one is being LGBTQ is a choice. I think we hear that a lot. And in reality, it's not a choice. Sexual orientation, gender identities are not choices. They are deeply ingrained aspects of a person's identity. Just like being straight or being cisgender, like no one ever questions like why the person is straight or if it's a choice. I mean, they just are straight. So just like gay people, they just are gay. There's no need for explanations. The second one's very harmful. Being LGBTQ plus identities can be cured. And when I say cure, that means convert to straight or convert to cisgender. We hear this quite a lot as well. It's very harmful because in reality, we cannot change a person's gender or sexual identity, nor should we have to, right? There's a very harmful practice called conversion therapy, which is a practice that forcefully converts gay people to become straight or transgender people to become cisgender. And that is actually not based on scientific evidence at all, and that's why it's being discredited by a lot of the mental health community. And because it also carries real life harmful consequence for LGBT people. So that is really a harmful misconception. Oh, last one is a very common one. Being LGBTQ is a Western concept. We hear this so much in Malaysia. It's annoying because in reality it's far from the truth. LGBTQ identities are not exclusive to Western concept or culture. In various cultures, you can actually see diverse sexual orientation and gender identity throughout history. Like even there's an indigenous Iban tribe called Manang Bali, and they're basically a group of gender non-conforming shamans. Okay, they are male-bodied individuals, but they wear dress and they adopt like feminine traits, and they're actually highly respected in the communities. And there's so much more diversity in the past that it has been mainly erased due to Western or British colonialism. So that's why people like forgot about it. Yeah, so these are the common misconceptions.
What are the strategies to navigate for those without a supportive community?
Okay, so that can be really hard, right? A lot of LGBT people in Malaysia, they don't have support, and social support is really important. So the first one I would say is try to find maybe local LGBTQ organizations like NGOs. I can name a few examples, like there's one called Pluho, people like us hang out, Pluho. There's one called Queer Lapis, Seed Foundation, and then PT Foundation. So these are just a few like general ones that you can find, and usually these organizations they provide community, they do events for LGBT people, they do workshops and talks. Some of them do counseling, even support groups, and just generally they can provide information on how to navigate a homophobic environment as an LGBT person in Malaysia. So you can usually find them on social media like Instagram, and so you can follow them, you can DM them and really ask for what you need or ask for information that you want. Second one will be seeking online support. So online support could be something like forums. There's quite a few Malaysian like local online groups, or it could be global as well. Definitely there's a lot of international ones that you can join. There's a few groups on Discord or Facebook groups that you can take a look and see. And I would say online spaces are generally quite helpful in providing a sense of community, belonging, and also, I mean, it helps you share your experience and hear people's experience as well, so you don't feel so alone in your struggles. And the third one is self-education. So self-education means really reading up on LGBT related stuff and culture. So this is especially for people who just found out they are queer or they are gay or they're very new to the LGBT scene. So you don't have a lot of information yet, right? So you feel maybe a bit lost, a bit stuck. So it would be good to read up on these things, really make use of the internet. There's a lot of YouTube videos on articles on LGBTQ experience and identity, and even more Instagram accounts or TikTok accounts that you can follow. So last but not least, there is seeking professional help. So therapists. I think most people do need therapists from time to time, and it would be helpful to seek mental health professionals who are equipped to deal with LGBTQ related issues. So in that case, I will suggest that you look up their therapist profile. I think most of therapists have profile on their website, so look it up and read if they are queer affirming or if they've mentioned they work with LGBT clients before, so you can really gauge whether or not they're a right fit. Or you can also ask them directly on the first session, or if you can before the first session, ask them about their opinions, about their views on LGBT people. Yeah, so these are the 4 strategies that you can use.
As a queer-affirmative therapist, what strategies or interventions do you use to support your clients in developing a positive queer identity and self-acceptance?
As a therapist in my sessions, the most important thing I have to do is to provide my clients a safe space to be their authentic self. So I will need to make myself as open as possible, really to discuss anything related to my client's queer identity, and really also like any aspects of their identity. So I will encourage them to share at their own pace about themselves. So for example, if my client comes in and they tell me that he is struggling with being gay and he wants to become straight, so I will slowly guide him towards self-acceptance, right? So of course I would want him to be like proud of being gay and just accept yourself, but it's not so easy, right? So first I need to really empathize and validate my client's struggles and feelings about being gay, because there is a reason he feels that way, right? There are like very valid reasons, the trauma, what happened in the past. And so after empathizing and validating any feelings and struggles, second step I will do is to really help them understand what has happened to them in the past, in the present, what has happened to them that contributed to their struggle to accept themselves. So could it be family values? Could it be the upbringing? Could it be the media that they consume? Just friends or people they surround themselves with? So really, what have they been exposed to and what have they learned throughout their life that has contributed to this struggle? So after really understanding that, unpacking everything, and then I will try to help them to challenge any negative belief that they might have about being gay, that they might have internalized over the years. So that brings me to my second point, which is psychoeducation. So I do this a lot with any of my clients, not just LGBT clients, but especially LGBT clients, because some of them, they might just found out they are gay, or they might be very new to the whole thing, so they are quite lost, right? So that is where I come in to provide them accurate information about the different LGBTQ plus identity, just the general issues that most LGBT people face. So really I have to do my own research first, of course, and then I psychoeducate them. And so that will hopefully help them correct any misconceptions that they might have internalized about being gay. That might really help them question like most of everything that they know or they thought to be true. Just question the whole systems that they're living in, so that they can, hopefully all of this would guide them towards self-acceptance. So that is what I do. For another strategies I use is using queer-affirming language. So I have to be very mindful of the language and the words that I use in my session. I cannot assume anything about my client's gender or sexual orientation or pronouns. So in that case, I have to ask them, what are your gender pronouns? Or maybe better yet, I can share my gender pronouns with them first, so maybe they'll be more comfortable to share with me after that. And I also try to use gender neutral terms. Instead of girlfriend, boyfriend, I say partner. And instead of husband, wife, I say spouse. So all this seems like very little things, but it can really help create like a safer and just a more inclusive space for the client to be themselves. And last but not least, I will share with my clients resources that are available. So of course, in this case, I also need to know the resources first. I need to do my own research. So I will share with them, I will help connect them with any LGBT NGOs or organizations or support groups that I know of, and just so that they can get help even outside of the sessions.
Is there anything you'd like to say to your audience?
Yes, so to all LGBTQ plus community in Malaysia, your identities are valid and you deserve better. And also, if you need any help, know that there are support and queer-affirming therapists out there who can help. To the general community, especially mental health professionals, I think we can do much better so that we can really help bridge the gap in LGBTQ mental health care.
Okay, that's a wrap.